This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined, as usual, by Maura Donnelly, my co-host. Maura?
Hello, Charlie.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Well, we're lucky enough today to be able to pick up on a conversation that we were having last month. We have one of the best guests that we've had in recent memory, former State Senator John Pippy, who is CEO, Chief Executive Officer of the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance. And we want to welcome you back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much,
Thank
Charlie.
you very
Appreciate
much,
it.
John, for coming again. It seemed as if last time that we had just scratched the surface on talking about coal and problems of coal and the prospects of coal in Pennsylvania. Coal is a very important part of the energy mix, both here in the Commonwealth and across the country. Last time we covered some, I think, very important subjects, and we got to the point where we were talking about clean coal technology. But one thing we didn't ask you about before, you were talking about bituminous and anthracite.
Right.
Now, bituminous is considered soft coal. Anthracite is considered to be hard coal. What's the difference in terms of usage and the difference in terms of the importance for Pennsylvania in those two types of coal?
Well, for us, bituminous coal in particular, over 80% goes to power generation. That's what we do. And then the other 20% goes to steel production, and there's a small percentages that kind of get used in some other things, but it's power generation, steel production for bituminous. Anthracite, as you mentioned, is a much harder coal seam, but they're also tighter seams. It's a much more labor-intensive work. In the anthracite region, a lot of that coal, it burns cleaner, has been used for home heating. You know, you remember the old coal stoves there. In some places they still haven't. It can also be involved in steel making and some other things as well. But the applications are a little less, or limited a little more than what we see on the bituminous side because of the cost. And it's a very high quality coal, so it's very specific as to how they use it.
Okay.
We talked last time about the historical significance of coal in Pennsylvania,
Right.
and I think a lot of people, and probably a lot of our viewers, tend to view coal in the old way,
Yes.
dirty, just rugged and rough, and typically not good. What can you tell us that will dispel those visions or notions of coal in Pennsylvania?
I think if you live in a coal area or anywhere where they've either had coal power generation or coal mining, look out your window. You know, the coal of today is not the coal of the 1950s and 60s, where we didn't have the emissions controls, the safety protocols fully in place, the environmental awareness. I'm an environmental engineer, so I love talking this stuff. Today's coal is over 90% cleaner than coal that was burned even 30 years ago. And it's because of technology. Since the 1970s and the Clean Air and Clean Water Act, you have seen the industry pump in over $100 billion in scrubbers and electrostatic precipitators and improved combustion processes, just like our cars, so that the coal plant of today is like a car of today. It's a lot different than the one you were driving in the 1970s. And we would argue, just like the automobile industry, it can become even cleaner, similar to the hybrid. If we start merging coal with natural gas combustion and the ability to cycle that on and off, it's the equivalent to a hybrid car. So there's a great opportunity for us.
The Obama administration in Washington, D.C. has almost seemed to have declared war on carbon and on many fossil fuels. And we're looking to reduce our carbon footprint as a nation. But when we look at the total amount of carbon, CO2 that's thrown into the atmosphere worldwide, what percentage comes from America?
Well, U.S. carbon, or U.S. coal, is less than 3% of all man-made CO2, and that's what people forget. You know,
less than 3%?
Less than 3%, and man-made CO2 is only 3.5% of total CO2. So it is 3% of 3%.
So this carbon is coming from perhaps
From
China?
Yes, China emits burns 3 times as much coal as we do. Now that they're becoming a developing nation, they're going to have even more emissions. When you look at CO2, 1/3 is power generation, 1/3 is the automobile and other forms of transportation, such as steamboats and those things. And then the other third is industrial processes in urban areas. So even if you were to shut down all U.S. coal, you would not have any type of significant impact.
Well, where else does carbon come from?
Well, it's all fossil fuels.
Okay.
Is a big thing. The evaporation of the ocean. You know, methane's a big part of the greenhouse gas mix as well, and there's a lot of sources of that. Every time you speak and breathe, CO2 is coming out. There's just a whole bunch of natural processes associated with CO2 that really never get talked about.
Well, with these proposed carbon emission standards that are being discussed in Washington, D.C., if they can't be met, what will the impact be? What will the impact be, for example, on the use of coal in the future as an energy source, on electric prices, and on business and the business community?
It will be a tremendous negative impact on the business community in particular, because the cost of energy is so critical when you look at profitability and the ability to manufacture products in a low-cost environment. I call it the lose-lose scenario. If you shut down U.S. coal, we will lose the billions of dollars that's spent around the country. We will lose the jobs, hundreds of or millions of jobs associated with it.
These are good paying jobs.
80,000 is the norm for a coal miner in Pennsylvania.
Good paying jobs that are unionized in many instances with good benefits.
And we have both. Actually, in PA, it's about 10% union in PA, and the other 90 are not. So there's a great opportunity for a win-win, but we're at a lose-lose because you lose all the jobs, you have a devastating impact on your economy, and as we just mentioned, we're such a small percentage, you don't achieve any environmental benefit because we're being dwarfed now by the growth in urban areas in India, China, even in Europe starting to go back to coal. Germany is citing coal as a way to meet its energy demand right now. Africa. So developing nations will make up 80% of the CO2 emissions in the next 30 years. We're not one of those.
Are all the other countries also looking at clean coal technology, or?
Some are.
Okay.
The majority aren't, because if you look at a developing nation, they have a hierarchy of needs, and the first need is to provide power to their constituents so that they can have clean water, regulated temperatures, refrigeration for better food. That's what they're focused on now. So they're where we were in the 40s and 50s. They won't get to where we are now for another 20 years unless we actually start to continue to grow our coal usage in the second and third levels of coal technology that we can then ship overseas to hopefully help clean up those areas and create overseas jobs for our guys.
Some environmentalists at the national level talk about achieving a zero level in carbon emission. Is that even possible?
Maybe someday we could see zero emissions, but what they don't talk about is to build a windmill, you will actually see more CO2 emissions making that steel than what you would benefit from. So you have to look at it from a holistic perspective, or look at all components. Can we technologically maybe someday get to zero emissions? Definitely on the power generation side, if we capture a lot of the emissions, if we improve the efficiency. But is that a realistic goal for now? No, you need to have about 5 to 10 intermediary steps in order for us to achieve that goal. That's just logical.
Well, can we make this about me for just a moment?
I'd love to.
Okay. What impact would this, if coal is taken out of the energy mix entirely, what's that going to mean for the average bill payer?
You're going to see a tremendous spike in energy prices.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
And it occurred in February, a few months ago, when we hit those cold spells, and we saw electric bills go from $200 to $800.
That's crazy.
Over 500 complaints to the PUC, and so it is. When you take away 40% of your source of energy, and you're only replacing one for every three, or for every 3 megawatts that goes out, you're only replacing it with one in the ground, you're going to see the supply is reduced, the price will go up. And that's, as we mentioned, that's really hard on low to middle income families, but it's devastating on businesses because the profit margins aren't where they used to be.
Right.
And if your cost of energy doubles, you start shutting down production, you start laying off people. And then you start looking at where can I go that has low-cost energy.
Tell us about the labor market a little bit. When you look into the future, if coal continues to be in the energy mix in Pennsylvania and the nation, how are we prepared to replace the retiring coal miners in Pennsylvania now? Do we have up-and-coming future? We have a supply of future coal miners, John?
We are in a scenario where we have millions of people out of work. You need to have the ability to operate equipment, show up to work on time, and we'll do all the rest of the training. It's a safety and labor-intensive business. There are plenty of people out there, and you could start at a level where you're making twice as much as the average person in your community. So yes, there is a labor force there. What's nice too is many of the skills you need for coal are also skills you need for Marcellus Shale. And so there's ability to go back and forth. If you're a great worker, you can market yourself in a way where you've never been able to, because there are a couple different players in the field now. And coal's one of them, but we don't say coal's the only one. You should coal, natural gas, nuclear, renewables. Those skill sets are transferable.
Do you have any information on your website regarding finding jobs?
Well, we don't get directly into the coal the job side, but what we do is we have the list of all our companies, over 300 companies, and links to their websites, and each of those websites will have the job information on them.
Okay.
John, you will hear some folks who are more pro-environmental or environmentalists who are perhaps on the extreme edge, who will come out and use your industry as a straw man and say, you folks don't care. The coal industry doesn't care about the environment.
Right.
Does the coal industry care about the environment? Does your association care about the environment?
Very much so. I mentioned last time we talked, I'm an environmental engineer. I spent a lot of time studying those issues. What I have on my side that they don't is I actually have facts. I have 30 years of reclamation projects in Pennsylvania where the new coal companies are fixing the issues that were done prior to the regulatory times and the legacy costs. I have the fact that you can look out your window, and if you drive by a coal-fired power plant, you'll see people fishing in the rivers. We have the bass tournaments now in the rivers. Bass Pro Master was in Pittsburgh, and they've been there a couple times. Mm-hmm. You look upside, you see bald eagles now nesting in and around coal-fired power plants. You see just a lot of recreation, and most importantly, we have seen an evolution in industry as a whole where environmental sustainability, quality of life are critical things. And that if you want the good employees, you have to provide those benefits. So I just say look at the facts and see the tremendous strides we've made and the investment that goes into improving our environment. And yes, we do care.
Okay. Well, thank you again for coming back and extending our conversation on this very important issue. I think Maura and I both had these additional questions we wanted to ask you, and so did our viewers wanted more information as well. So thanks again for coming. Look forward to talking with you in the future.
Thank you.
We'll be back with segment 2 of Behind the Headlines right after this. Stay tuned.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions to make the commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States, and by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by Penn Waste, your best local choice for your waste removal and recycling needs.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. On this segment, Amara and I are going to be joined by Dave Sanko, who is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Township Supervisors Association. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's nice to have you back. There's a new session that is beginning in Harrisburg. Folks are coming back to the House and the Senate. And with the elections, gubernatorial elections, and coming up in 2014, wondered if you could tell us what will be the issues confronting your association. What are you going to be looking at in the next several months?
Well, I think as we move towards June, everyone is conscious of moving towards another on-time budget. And our concerns are going to be to ensure that there aren't unfunded mandates put on local governments that will become tax increases in disguise. So we'll kind of fight fairly diligently against that and make sure that Harrisburg works on Harrisburg and lets local government alone.
And that means you have to pay very close attention in the wee hours of the morning, don't you, to make sure nothing happens? Because that's when it happens.
The wee hours of the morning are important times, and not time for sleep in May and June.
Well, I understand that one of the biggest issues facing your organization and the communities that you represent here is volunteers. Getting volunteers to help with civic responsibilities, particularly, or for example, firefighting. So what kind of challenge is that? I mean, what are the local communities facing here?
Well, it's a huge challenge. I mean, we all think of the volunteers we think of first and most, as you indicated, are firefighters. They are. There was a time in Pennsylvania there were 300,000 firefighters. I mean, there's now down to
all volunteers or
all
just
volunteers.
Oh,
yes.
wow!
Now down to less than 75,000. Now some of that has been a result of efficiencies in fire services and new technologies, but in many instances it's just been a loss of volunteers. Those are folks who they're special people. Normal people run out of a building when it's on fire. They run in.
Yeah.
And that's we applaud them for doing that. But one of the reasons that we have a great concern is that townships are tasked with providing for the safety of the community. And in doing that, we work closely with the volunteer fire companies. And I don't know that most people know, but if the volunteer fire companies, first volunteer fire companies were born in Pennsylvania. The first volunteer fire company in Philadelphia was Ben Franklin back in the colonial days. But if those volunteer fire companies were to go away, and we were to have to then rely on a paid fire service, that would, and some of our cities do that, but from a statewide perspective, that would cost $5 billion, billion with a B. Wow. That is a huge amount of money that would have to be borne by local taxpayers, and we don't want to do that. We want to ensure that we can continue to find volunteers to serve not only fire services but also in local government and other community activities.
What's the ideal complement? You said we're down to 75,000. What would be the ideal complement of volunteer firefighters? Any idea?
Don't know.
Okay.
I mean, obviously we're getting by
Somewhere between 75,000 and 300,000.
75 and 150. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
That makes sense.
What's the answer, Dave? How do we get more people interested in volunteerism again in Pennsylvania, as we've seen in the past?
Well, I think that there's a couple answers to that. One is a new generation. The new generation coming along, I think, is interested in making a difference, and it's got to be a meaningful experience for them. So, trying to make, whether you're volunteering in fire services or volunteering at your church or Little League or Scouts or in local government, to make that a meaningful experience where your contribution counts, and that one person, helping people understand that one person can and do make a difference.
I have 7 nephews, and I have 2 of them, the youngest ones, are 7 years old right now. Every single one of them loved fire trucks, just absolutely loved them. Went to parades, waited for the fire trucks when they were coming down their street, just loved them. How do you harness that? I mean, and it would really be a good idea at that age to start bringing them into the fold. What can we do to get these younger kids not just enamored of them while they're sitting on a parade route, but to keep that interest going?
Sure. Well, I think that education and in part our schools will play a large role in that. Whether it's current volunteers firefighters or local government officials going into classrooms and talking to them about what it's like to be a fireman or what it's like to be a township supervisor. To go in and begin that education at the beginning levels and recognize that we've lost track of that over the last couple decades. Our education system has gotten other priorities.
And outside of civics classes.
Outside of civics classes. I mean, there was a time when I was growing up, everybody had to have civics. Now, I think in 2016 that'll be back as a graduation requirement. I think that will go a long way to helping people to understand the value of an engaged citizenry and the role that they can play in government. But science and technology are important. But they can't be standalone. There's a part of civic engagement that is a necessary component of a democratic society.
So education is one element. The thing I worry about, Dave, is that one of the elements in American political culture is this, we've traditionally felt an obligation to participate in civic life, and that seems to be disappearing. As you indicate, as we see volunteerism sort of erode in Pennsylvania, how do we deal with our way of life? There's a movement that's out there to simplify things, to simplify life and make everything smaller and simpler. And I don't know is that the solution, but I talk to my students and they all believe that you're poor if everyone in the family doesn't have a car, if there isn't a TV in every room, if everyone doesn't have their own bedroom, and if they don't have 2-week vacations. I mean, it seems that we are so busy now trying to maintain this fast-paced, very rich lifestyle that we have, that are we missing something? Is that hurting our civic volunteerism?
Well, I think you hit on it, hit the nail squarely on the head, and it's largely a function of time. And that people just don't have the time or don't feel as though they have the time with the need for in many households for two parents to be working to make ends meet. There are a whole variety of things that challenge our time, from kids who are involved in high school sports and doing other things, and I think you're right. There is a great expectation on having everything. And maybe that does need to be ratcheted back. I mean, we've seen some survey data that says that the current generation is the first generation in decades that is not going to have a lifestyle better than their parents had. That's alarming. But at the same time, if we've raised the level too high, we need to ratchet people back into being involved in their community, being involved in helping each other, and basic citizen engagement. And they can, and it does work at the local level. I mean, it is a lot easier to work. I mean, that's why there's Boy Scout troops in communities and Girl Scout troops in communities, as opposed to being a national scouting council where you just get mail from the president.
Well, it seems to me that we need to change the whole definition of what it means to be wealthy, because we do tend to put it on so many material items and material things, like Charlie was saying, TVs and cars and things like that. But there's a whole different way of, of defining wealth. So we started out by talking today about some of the issues you think you might be facing with the General Assembly budget time. Always a fun time of year in Harrisburg. What are some of the other important issues that may not necessarily come up at budget time that your organization is facing right now?
Well, I think that almost going back to a fundamental reason for why people get involved in local government or get involved in government at all, and it's to make a difference. It's to do something. I mean, I know there are people who sit back and say people serve. All those politicians are in office for the money, or the power, or the glory. Well, folks serve in local office, I think, and start off involved in civic engagement because they care about their community, and they care about their kids, and they care about their grandkids, and they care about what that community is going to look like for them in the future. And I think going back to more of that will go a long way to changing not only current involvement, but future generation civic engagement.
Well, what exactly can your organization do? We've talked about civics classes coming back. That's going to be helpful. more of an emphasis on volunteerism and civic responsibility. Is there anything specifically that the township supervisors are going to do to educate, because they can be and be out there and be
Sure.
helping with that? Do you have anything planned?
Well, I think we're going to encourage our local officials to partner with their local schools with kids that are being homeschooled, because oftentimes we forget about them. But to give them opportunities to learn about local government, bring them into local government, have them attend meetings, having them write essays, be involved in community projects.
Bring them into the firehouse.
And try into the firehouse. Try and
Love
help them
that.
see what's going on in their community, more than just going to the post office and the ball field and the church.
Well, I think that a lot of kids don't even realize that they really are volunteers. I'm not sure that a lot of young people realize that. They know that they're firefighters. They probably think it's a career path, but it can be something that you're doing just for your community.
Sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has been glamorized by TV shows that show paid firefighters, and there certainly are a lot of paid firefighters, and they provide an equally valuable service.
Right.
But as you point out, the spirit of volunteerism is what has made allowed Pennsylvania to prosper when others have not.
Yeah.
Now, in just the last minute and a half, Dave, are there other states that have a model that we can look to that are doing this now, in terms of involving the young people of the community with the township and with local government?
We actually are moving ahead and planning. We've not found any other states that are doing that, so we're planning to try and blaze the trail and create a model for others to follow, and to ensure that we have civic engagement. We've had some discussions with the state education department about the value of including a local government component in the civics education course, which I think everybody would agree is important, and certainly here in Pennsylvania has value. Oftentimes we know the kids learn about the federal government, and we know they learn a little bit less about the state government, but I don't know that we've always taught them that there's anything below that where they can actually have an influence. And that may be one of the reasons why people have become so cynical, because they don't realize there's a local government they can touch.
Well, I have the solution for you. It's actually quite simple. You just need to put it on their smartphones, because their faces are buried in their smartphones, and that's what they'll pay attention to.
I wouldn't disagree.
And we
with
make
you.
light, but yeah, I mean, that's how they communicate, that's how they learn. Well, I don't know that they're learning great stuff, but that's...
They live in that box.
They
If
live
we don't
in
have a
that.
presence inside there, there's not going to be much of a future for democracy.
through the way they like to be spoken
Dave,
to.
we're going to have to come back in the near future to talk about your upcoming summer conference, and to talk about the gubernatorial race. So we'll look to have you back here very soon.
Look forward to it.
Thanks for being with us. Thanks for watching us today. We'll be with you again next week. Maura and I will be right here on Behind the Headlines.